Hello and welcome to Cannaman TV. My name is Connor McLeod, and in this very informative interview, I speak to Cannabis Lawyer, Robert Jappie. Robert is partner at Ince law firm and is regarded as one of the foremost individuals specialising in cannabis law in the UK. In this interview, we discuss what to do if you get a visit from the police, novel foods and how small companies can reach compliance, Brexit and the impact this has had on the CBD industry, medicinal cannabis, establishing a UK recreational cannabis market, and what to expect in 2021. Make sure and like and subscribe, and turn on notifications. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can join me on Patreon, where you can help to build a stronger cannabis media platform. Now then, let's talk cannabis. The first thing I was going to mention was, unless I'm mistaken, you are the representative lawyer for We the Undersigned, is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. So I act for Phil and the WTU on a pro bono basis.
Excellent. So what I was going to start off with then is, in that group you'll have recreational and medicinal users. Could you describe what to do if a consumer gets a chap at the door by the authorities?
Look, if a police officer comes to your door and doesn't have a warrant, that's the very first thing you've got to actually establish. Then you're entitled to tell them to get lost. and that would be my official advice. You know, if a police officer comes to your door and starts asking questions, unless they've actually got a warrant for either to search your property or to arrest you yourself, you have no obligation to have a conversation with them. Probably from a practical perspective, it'd be better to be polite, you know, rather than actually telling them to do one. But effectively, you know, you can say, I'm not interested in discussing my day, and I've no interest in answering your questions. So unless you have a warrant to come in here, I'm going to shut the door.
Right.
That's the key thing, because if they don't have a warrant, the only way they can come in is if you invite them in. They have to have your permission. So that's the first step. If they do have a warrant, then you obviously, you know, you have to comply. They can force their way in if you don't allow them in. The best thing is to be calm. You know, you don't necessarily have to show them anything. Again, you made the distinction between sort of medicinal use and adult use. At that stage, the likelihood is they're probably not going to make any distinction, you know, unless you do have the CAN card that you can produce to them. The best thing you can do is be quiet, let them do their search, and whatever they find, if it does result in your arrest, then you make sure you get a solicitor and then follow your solicitor's advice once you get to the police station.
Are you allowed to record the police when they're performing their duties, kind of thing?
You certainly are. I mean, most police officers will have a body cam these days, so you can ask them to make sure that their body cam is on, and it's usually a little circle and it lights up red, I think, when it's on.
Right.
So, you know, that's always a good thing. Make sure that they've got their body cam recording. But yes, you're absolutely allowed to record the police, particularly if they're in your home address. You know, it's your house. They can't prevent you from doing that. So if you do have any concerns about the way they're conducting themselves or what they're planning to do, then yeah, get your phone out and start recording them. Bear in mind, they've got a search warrant. They might take your phone as well. So you obviously have to weigh that up.
Yeah, a bit of a selfie for the police then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Hey, look, I don't trust these guys at all. You know, it's always a good idea to check their ID, check their paperwork, make sure that they are acting in accordance with their duties, in accordance with the execution of their duties. That's actually the legal term. Anything else that they don't have legal authority to do, you've got to stop them. You know, and you know, if they're not acting in the exercise of their duties, then any evidence they find, any comments you make to them would not be admissible in court.
Right. The next talking point, essentially, is the talking point of CBD and novel foods. I'm sure you're exhausted talking about this, to be honest.
Yeah. I think we all are. I think we're all sick of it, to be honest, Connor, aren't we? You know, it's been going on for about a year now. I think it's almost a year since the FSA made their announcement. But yeah, I think everyone is done. It's been done to death, isn't it?
It definitely has, and frustratingly, I'm going to ask you the same thing though. It's like,
no, it's okay. I think look, lots of people still are worried, and you know, the deadline is coming, so it's still an important topic.
Yeah, it's just for the complexity behind it, because obviously there are several factors. In particular, just could you detail the several factors that are the key of importance, and how can small companies also comply with the novel foods application without spending the ridiculous amount that's needed?
Yeah, so the point of novel foods is it's consumer safety. Ultimately, that is the goal of the food regulators here in the UK. So, you know, the CBD industry has sprung up very quickly. You know, it's growing rapidly, and the nature of the products. You know, companies are selling topicals, they're selling tinctures. You know, they're selling ingestible products. The idea is to make sure that these products are safe, because we are encouraging people to take these products every day as part of their daily routine for a long period of time. Companies want their customers to be loyal and to be repeat customers. So if you're going to consume a new product for a long period of time, you've got to make sure it's safe. So that's what novel foods is about. Now, the key in the UK with the FSA is the date of 31st of March 2021. So in about 2 months' time, just over 2 months' time, UK CBD companies have to be able to assert novel food compliance by that date. Now, the key is to think about, what does asserting novel food compliance mean? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to make your own submission. There are other ways of being able to assert novel food compliance, particularly for brands who buy their product in or have it white labeled for them. It's very unlikely that they would want to make their own novel food submission, because one, they probably don't have the funds, or they don't have the hands-on knowledge of their supply chain. They're outsourcing the production of their product. A brand like that can actually still be novel food compliant, provided they are sourcing their products from a novel food compliant company. So you effectively piggyback off your supplier submission. Okay, so I would suggest that there's 3 ways to do it. One, if you're an ingredients manufacturer, so if you're a licensed producer or an extractor and you're making the CBD distillate or the isolate, you're probably going to have to do your own submission. Okay, because you want to sell this product in bulk. So most of these companies will have done it already. Mile High Labs, all of these guys, they've been on the ball. They're the ones really been pushing this agenda anyway. Yeah. You've then got the white labeling companies, the ones who are actually manufacturing the product. They will be buying their product in from an ingredients manufacturer, for example, as I said, Mile High. The white labeling company might source all their raw material from a licensed producer, and then they will make the actual finished products. They will either have to do their own submission for the finished product formulations, or they will have to get the supplier to include it in their submission. So, for example, a white labeling company may make 30 different SKUs, 30 different types of ingestible product. They can either make a submission for those 30 finished products, or they can ask Mile High to include it as part of their submission, okay? And then finally, you've got the brand who is getting the white labeling company to make their products. They need to get some sort of document from their white labeling company to show that these are novel food compliant products, and the brand can piggyback from the novel food compliant white labeler and achieve compliance that way. So those are the 3 routes, really.
So does that kind of sounds like then there's like a strong possibility of a monopoly in the near future of a small group of companies owning the majority of the ingredients?
Yeah. So again, if I was an ingredients manufacturer and I've just spent however many hundreds of thousands of pounds of getting a submission in, yeah, I want to make my money back somehow. So if you come to me, you're the white labeling company, Connor, and you say, right, we want you to be our supplier, I will say, okay, that's fine. But if you want to benefit from my novel food compliance, you're going to have to sign a 5-year supply deal with me. I'm going to want to lock you in for 5 years to make sure that it's been worth my while to spend all this money on novel food compliance. So yes, you will see some fairly heavy, contractual agreements being put into place. And you'll also see a lot of companies disappearing from the market as well, because either they just don't have the money, the inclination, the resources, or the knowledge on to get their novel food submissions in. So yeah, there'll probably be a bit of consolidation in the market, but hopefully long term the industry can get to grips with novel foods and it won't become such a hassle in future.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a very transitional period that we're going through at the moment, where stabilisation is just kind of setting in place.
Yeah, so the reason why the FSA has set the deadline is they want their idea is they want CBD companies to focus now, the existing ones, to focus on achieving novel food compliance. They don't want any new products being brought to the market. They don't want new players entering the market. They want the companies that are established now to achieve novel food compliance, and then thereafter, things should get a bit easier. They accept that novel food, this restriction is probably going to stifle innovation in the sector for a couple of years. It's going to take a couple of years before everyone has got to grips with it. But after that, hopefully you should have companies be able to be in a position to introduce new products. They understand how the regime works. They know how to register new products, and things should get a bit easier. So it's good and bad, unfortunately. Regulations like this, improving, consumer confidence is a good thing. It brings market stability, which is what we want.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a bit restrictive, and it means big changes for companies who've been able to sell their products without too much oversight so far.
Yeah. What impacts Brexit had on this whole process?
Well, the UK novel food regime is entirely as a result of Brexit. It's created the political environment for the UK to be able to act on a unilateral basis. And we've seen the same thing with the vaccine approval. So the UK has been the first to approve all the vaccines because they weren't bound by the EU decision to act as a bloc. So you can see the vaccines being rolled out very slowly in the EU, and UK's got the jump on everybody.
Yeah.
It's the same with novel foods. The UK has seen the opportunity to diverge. And so as of 1st of January this month, the UK has its own novel food regime, and it provides a clear route to compliance in terms of novel food. Companies here in the UK now know how to be compliant, whereas in the the European Commission position, it's still a bit up in the air. So there are some positives. The flip side of Brexit is the disruption in terms of import and export. Lots of companies sell in the UK. They also sell into the EU. Yeah. You have EU companies that also sell into the UK, and the movement, the shipment of goods across borders is really, really under pressure because of now customs declarations are in place. VAT is an issue. Rules on origin is a really big issue as well. And then you've also got to bear in mind that the UK government has introduced a customs border within sovereign territory. So the Northern Ireland is effectively subject to EU rules. So moving product from Great Britain, from England, Wales or Scotland to Northern Ireland is like moving product into the EU. So you've also got to factor that in. So it's incredibly complex.
Yeah, it certainly seems quite exhausting, to be honest, Rob. But you just touched on there the difficulty and the barrier crossing and stuff like that. It's like medicinally is one of the things that's popped in recently, where the Dutch government has came forward and confirmed that they will honour prescriptions for individuals that require Bedrocan up until July 2002. Well, this year, essentially 2021. So, I mean, what do you see happening after July when it comes to medicine, in particular for cannabis?
Look, I think it's a really positive step from the Dutch government to agree to that, and credit to the groups who've been pressurising the UK government to get a solution, because this is mental to give people a day's notice that suddenly all of their supply chains is going to be disrupted substantially. Is terrible, particularly when these are important medications. What I genuinely hope that is this deal between the UK and the EU, and it's a thin deal. It's a really thin deal. I hope it's a floor rather than a ceiling. I think hopefully the realities of international trade and supply chains and that sort of thing will force the government into negotiating ancillary deals with the EU to ease these types of problems. So particularly in relation to pharmaceuticals, to the movement of goods. The UK has the opportunity to reach out to the EU and say, right, let's make some additional deals. Let's build on this deal in order to make the transit of goods and medications run a bit smoother. Obviously, the EU is going to want something in return. So if the UK says, please, can we do a deal on this? The EU is going to say, well, you're going to have to abide by our rules. So from a practical perspective, I hope the government approach it in a pragmatic way. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's certainly a big, massive question mark come summertime. Recreationally, what are your thoughts on recreational cannabis, and how difficult would it be to integrate a recreational cannabis market in the UK?
It's really funny, you speak to a large portion of the industry, particularly, the organisations who've been pushing, the medicinal cannabis side of things and want to keep the industry very professional and a bit corporate. Yeah. They don't like to talk about rec. Everyone is like, don't mention rec, don't talk about it. So from the agenda I see is that it's not a political topic at the moment. It's not being discussed at high levels in any sort of significant way. And the organisations that do have clout in getting changes at a governmental level, for example, the Centre for Medicinal Cannabis and organisations like that, the party liners do not talk about rec.
Right.
I take up a bit of a different position. First of all, we don't use the word rec. We don't use recreational cannabis because that has the effect of perhaps trivializing the use of cannabis, and as you know, it's not just about medicines or or recreational use. There are a range of reasons why people use cannabis, and particularly my exposure to Phil Monk and the WTU has really given me a really good insight into the range of uses the range of reasons that people do use cannabis for. So I'm very much in favor. I genuinely believe that this pandemic, as terrible as it's been, I suspect it's going to accelerate further legalization and regulation on a global scale. Governments are going to need job creation, tax revenue, and cannabis seems like a no-brainer to me. To legalize and regulate and give people access to it. It'll be one of those things in the UK. I think it'll happen much. It'll catch everyone by surprise. People will say, "Oh no, it won't 10 years or whatever," and then suddenly the conversation will start, and then all of a sudden it'll start happening really, really suddenly. So when it's going to be, I don't know, but sooner rather than later, I hope.
Yeah, I'm sure most of the viewers will be thinking the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, come on, we're adults.
Yeah.
Any sort of adult use legalization has to be implemented in a sensible and proportionate manner, along with an educational program. Kids are taught at school these days. Cigarettes are really bad for you. Here's the facts. If you want to go and smoke them when you're old enough, that's up to you. You're an adult. You can make the decision. Here's the information. No reason why you can do that with cannabis. At least there's a positive point to consuming cannabis, unlike cigarettes. You know what I mean? But you can educate kids at a young age about the harms and the dangers, and allow them to make adult choices as they reach the correct age. And I think the UK population should be treated more like adults in relation to cannabis.
There's actually a lady that's produced a cannabis-based children's book recently. I can't remember her name.
Oh, cool.
And I think something like Hemp and the Wizard or something along that. I forget. I'll put the link up as we're talking now. But and that's
that is cool. Yeah.
It's super good, and that's what I thought. I was like, these are, we do need education, because I think there is a stigma, and like you mentioned, tobacco, alcohol as well. They're not really applicable to cannabis as a basis, because neither of these substances are a necessity for your endocannabinoid system, and I think that's what makes the conversation very different. But again, it's similar in the light that all three substances can be abused, But yeah, so what's your personal opinion there? Like, what's your daily basis when it comes to like your job, essentially, like on a daily basis? What do you normally interact with? Is it companies trying to push through CBD, or what's your day to day?
My practice has probably been skewed in the direction of CBD by about 65%. So probably about 2/3 CBD, 1/3 medicinal cannabis.
Right.
From a commercial perspective, most sensible companies, particularly the bigger companies, will be running parallel strategies. You'll have your medicinal cannabis strategy and you'll have your CBD strategy. Medicinal cannabis is the long-term play. It requires substantial investment, but the potential returns in the long term are massive. Mm-hmm. Whereas companies like CBD, because you can generate revenue immediately. You know what I mean? I could buy a liter of distillate from the US, bring it in, make my products, and sell it straight away, and revenue is great for the balance sheet. Every company wants to see revenue coming in, particularly if you're going to start looking at mergers or acquisitions or listing on the stock market or something like that. But you do hear, a lot of companies, the sensible ones, they are thinking far into the future, and they want to be in a position when an adult use market is introduced, and that means having supply chains in place. That means having distribution structures in place, because the likelihood is we put CBD into this category of FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. Adult use cannabis will fall into the same category. So it's all going to be about, right, how do you market these products? How do you deliver these products? How do you fulfill your orders? How do you distribute? So although we're not, in the corporate side of the industry, they don't talk about adult use. Everyone's thinking about it. Everyone knows it's probably inevitable. So that's the fee-paying side of my practice. But you have to sort of remember the grassroots of this sector, and you have to, you forget that part of the industry at your peril. And so that's why I'm so happy to be working with Phil Monk and the WTU, and I'm happy to give my time to them on a pro bono basis and do everything I can to assist their endeavours.
Yeah, no, it's always appreciated as well. When I seen that was the case, and that we understand had managed to, acquire a lawyer straight away, I was like, these are steps in the right direction. Not only for the fact that it strengthens the campaign, but also it gives an insight to the fact that individuals are kind of broadening their horizons towards what cannabis actually is.
Yeah, so it's a funny story, actually. First of all, when you sent me the message asking me to come on, it was when I scrolled through your previous participants. I saw Phil Monk, so I was like, oh, okay. Well, if Phil has been on there, then that's good.
Yeah. Phil's a good guy.
He is a good guy. But I remember, I think it was a Sunday night or something. I was sat on the couch with my laptop. This has been nearly 2 years ago, something like that. And I got this email, and it was the longest email I've ever received. It was about 48 paragraphs long from Phil.
Classic Phil.
Yeah. And, he's incredibly passionate and he's incredibly knowledgeable. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can read all this. So I sent him, I thought out of courtesy, I sent an email back and I said, should we just have a call, Phil? And so we had a call, I think, the next day. And it was, once I spoke to him, I realized, okay, this is actually a really important endeavor and it's something I want to be involved in. So, yeah, credit to Phil. He's been a part of my education in this industry. So I'm grateful for it.
Well, that's fantastic that that's the case. What do you see happening this year? Personally, do you see more of the same, more CBD legislation? Do you think the end of the year is a bit of a mystery? Do you think?
I think 2021 is. I mean, look, it's so COVID dependent. I think in general the industry has held up relatively well. CBD businesses, probably most of my clients, I say, sales have held up. Some are reporting increases.
Yeah.
There's been a big shift from, the companies that have physical presences, the actual CBD stores on the high street or wherever they may be. I think they've obviously really suffered, much like any other physical store. So I know some companies who put a lot of money and time into building up 2-3 physical stores, and they may not go back to them, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Everyone has been redirecting their marketing budget and efforts towards their online offering. Mm-hmm. So we're feeling very positive about 2021, particularly when the vaccine is rolled out and the economy opens up again. I think there's going to be a big push for new industries. There's going to be people looking for to broaden their horizons, and the potential growth for the cannabis sector is massive. So in the long term, I think the industry is only going to grow and grow and grow. Yeah. And we're hopeful that 2021 is going to be a big year. 2020 was supposed to be the big year. It was supposed to be the year of mainstreaming cannabis. And obviously, COVID put an end to that. But hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think the conversation surrounding cannabis in the industry and how countries can best utilize it is only going to increase the clamor for it,
I don't think there's ever been a time that's been more applicable for applying cannabis to attempt to boost the economy, because you've got such a diverse spectrum of influence that would inevitably affect it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I'm sure it's the info is out there. I'd love to see what the impact has been on Canada. How many jobs have they created since full legalization? How much tax revenue has the government achieved from legalization in 2017? Bear in mind, Canada's only 30 million people, whereas we're 60. Yeah. It'd be really, really interesting to see what this country could achieve in terms of job creation and tax revenue if they were to take the plunge. But it's not just the UK. You'll see it. Mexico's going fully legal. Israel, I think, is as well. Yeah. Narrow loss in the New Zealand referendum, which is a shame. But I can only foresee positive things ahead for everyone in the sector.
Certainly seems to be a green revolution happening on a global front.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's just that. This is the funny thing, Connor. You probably get it yourself. But when I tell people, I'm a cannabis lawyer, they're like, oh, that's very niche. That's so niche, And I'm like, it's not niche. It's wide. It's so wide. It covers so many different things. I've had to learn so many different aspects of law, agriculture, licensing, pharmaceuticals, food standards, vaping regulations. Cannabis has so many applications to so many different industries. For people to think it's niche is a complete misunderstanding of the situation.
I fully agree. In fact, actually, most of the viewers will probably be exhausted when I mention this again here, but I've written a book then, and within the book, I tried to create a broad spectrum analysis of all the instances that cannabis brings up in discussion. And because of that situation, it became a nauseating endeavour through research, because it was like neurology kind of thing, if I can say it properly, and the physiology of the endocannabinoid system. You're then doing the economics, and it just, over and phytochemicals, it was all this stuff. And then when I go to work or I'm walking in public and people ask about cannabis, and they immediately go, So like if there's somebody that doesn't know about it, like schizophrenia or paranoia and all these different other things that are essentially like almost programmed buzzwords, it seems. It's like it's almost like you're dealing with a psychological implant that they just, these are buzzwords they throw back at you, you know.
Yeah. And the funny thing is with those arguments against legalization, if you actually dig down into them and analyze them a bit careful in a bit more detail, they actually end up being arguments for legalization and regulation. You know what I mean? So, look, abuse of cannabis is a concern. So why would you hand over control of it to organized criminal gangs when you could legalize and regulate and have rules and regulations in place that mean that people can enjoy it on a safe and controlled basis? So you must send me the details for your book, Connor. I'd be interested to read it.
I'd be absolutely delighted at that. It's something,
please send me the details and I'll buy it and I'll have a read and then I'll do a review.
Awesome.
If you like.
Definitely. I would be absolutely delighted with that. I'll definitely send you the details after this. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, please do.
I'm actually in the process of doing a spoken word version of it. So I'm on chapter 3.
Okay.
Just so I can put it up on the audio book kind of thing. And what was quite funny is reading over your own stuff. It's like I'm actually really trying my best to slow down talking at the moment, even though it might not sound like it. So when I'm reading over my own stuff, I have to kind of like, it's ridiculous. I've got to kind of read over it. So yeah, that's something that should be coming soon in the next couple of weeks. Just the audio version of the book. But I really enjoyed writing it. And the thing actually, that's what I was going to say. When you mentioned there that why would you hand over the responsibility of a substance that could potentially be abused to criminal gangs? One of the consequences of that approach, essentially, I included in the book was the legal highs. So I just included a chapter called synthetic cannabinoids. And within it, obviously, I included nabilone, dronabinol. But the main basis of it was describing legal highs and the synthetic basis behind the chemicals, which obviously are CB antagonists. So, and the cause of really, they're unstable, obviously, they're lethal in many instances, and this was a consequence of prohibition, and yet this was
absolutely
one of the most glaring examples of that prohibition doesn't work, because consumers were still pursuing a direction where you could consume a product which was smokable and relatively short lasting. So it doesn't really matter about prohibiting it. What you see is the consumer demand is still there. So the best thing to do is, as you mentioned earlier, take an adult approach and provide a safe method, much like the Scottish government are applying with drugs at the moment with these safe rooms.
Yeah, look, you're completely right. It's about prohibition just drives things underground, and the environment then becomes less safe. So with your reference to the Scottish government, they're taking on board the idea of harm reduction. It's going to happen. What can we do to make it safer? And I think that we need a bit more progressive approaches like that.
Yeah, good to say though, it did only criticism of the Scottish government when it comes to that. It's like it did only take us to be topping fucking Europe to be.
Yeah, they've taken their time over addressing the problem. Yeah, for sure. But at least they've reached that position.
Yeah.
In the long run, yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, but I'll let's say, Rob, that's essentially we've covered everything I was going to talk about. Would you like to throw anything in before we get going?
No, look, it's a pleasure to be on. I'll definitely have a read of your book, and if you ever have space to invite me back on, then I'm always happy to join in.
Thanks to Robert for giving me his time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.